Hi, Eric Vines with Second Half Fitness. We're a fitness community for older adults, as you may know. And I wanted to do this video for those of you who are in jobs that require you to sit for long periods of time, or maybe sitting at home for more than an hour or two a day. We classify that as a sedentary lifestyle. And there are certain muscles and joints in the body that constrict and tighten as we sit for prolonged periods of time. And so that's what the video is for, is to stretch those muscles to create flexibility and pliability in the body, and to help you get the benefits of an improved lifestyle as a result of that. So I hope you enjoy this video and are able to implement some of the stretches to help improve your lifestyle and your physical condition and abilities. So the video went a little bit longer than I expected. It's around 25 minutes, maybe a little more, but go through it at your own pace and try the stretches and be consistent with it. That's the key to getting the benefits. So here we go. And I want to share some tips with you today about how to correct imbalance caused by a sedentary lifestyle. And we're going to define a sedentary lifestyle by sitting for longer than 2 hours a day for the purpose of this video. So if you're sitting for more than 2 hours a day, what happens in the body? Well, we know that muscles tighten over time, right? And so they need to be stretched out. We also know that sitting for prolonged periods of time creates imbalance in the muscles and the structures of the body, which also leads to complications like heart disease, diabetes, and other things. And so I want to just give you some tips of what we can actually do about it, what we can do on a daily basis to correct the imbalance of sitting. So it's really essential to correct that imbalance. Otherwise, we suffer those ill effects, right? So two benefits of stretching. One is flexibility, the other is pliability. And if you were asked to define the two, you may be hard pressed to differentiate between the two, right? But I'll give it a shot here. So flexibility, we know, is the ability of a joint to move through the full range of motion, like my arm being able to straighten out completely and move back and forth. That's flexibility. Now, pliability is a little bit different. Pliability is really more about durability and resilience of the muscle to be able to stretch and rebound without injury. So stretching is going to stretch the muscle fibers in the body and make them more flexible, able to move more freely, and more pliable, be able to resist shock and stretching without injury. So two things to consider when we're stretching. First of all, we want to hold the stretch for 30 to 60 seconds. 60 is better. If you're stretching on a lunch break or something like that, and you want to just get 2 or 3 stretches in, 30 seconds will work. And I'll tell you why. It takes 30 seconds for the nervous system of the body to recognize that the muscle fibers are actually stretching, rather than just going through the range of motion. And so if you're able to hold it longer than that, then that stretch will be just a little longer lasting. So the second thing to consider is that we don't want to rock or jiggle while we're stretching. We want to just remain static in that stretch position. So where would you guess there's tightness in the body from sitting? Well, I'm sitting now, and when we're sitting, what are we doing? We're watching TV, or we're at a computer at a desk, and maybe we're typing and in this position most of the day. Or maybe we're reaching for things occasionally, right? But if you notice, the body tends to be hunched forward just a bit and the shoulders forward. when we're sitting. And so you're going to have muscles in the back that tend to be tightened. And you're going to have muscles in the back of the neck and even the side of the neck that tighten. And then going on down the body, the whole posterior chain of the body, the hamstrings, the calves, and all those muscles on down the body tend to tighten as we're sitting. So I'm going to go through those one at a time, starting at the bottom with our calves. And so I'm going to attempt to point the camera and show you a calf stretch. And keep in mind, we're holding the stretch for 30 to 60 seconds, even though I'm not spending that much time here on the demonstration. So first of all, we're going to cover a calf stretch. So the best way to stretch the calves is to find a step with a handrail. I'm going to use the chair as a handrail because this particular step doesn't have one. We're going to step up onto that step with the balls of our feet and then lower the heels down as low as they'll go. And you'll start to feel a stretch in the back of the leg and the calves. And just hold that stretch as long as you like, 30 to 60 seconds, remember, and come back up. And you can do it even 2 or 3 times to get a little bit more of a stretch. If you have plantar fasciitis, or you know anyone that does, doing this several times during the day and being consistent with it will actually give some relief to that plantar fasciitis. Okay, we're going to move to another stretch now. This is simply called a hamstring stretch or a posterior chain stretch. And so on this one, we're simply placing one foot on either side of the front leg of a dining chair. The toes are under the edge of that chair. And we're bending one knee and keeping the other one straight. And then just bending the body until we feel a stretch in the back of that straight leg. And then you can bend a little more to experience more of a stretch. And again, you're going to hold that 30 to 60 seconds. After you've done that, then we're going to move back just a little bit, leaning back into that stretch, watching our balance. And now you'll start to feel a stretch up at the top of that hamstring and into the glutes. Again, you'll hold that for 30 to 60 seconds. And then a third part of that stretch is, again, watching our balance and leaning forward just a bit. You'll start to feel a stretch in the lower part of that leg, in the calf, and even under the foot. Like I mentioned, plantar fasciitis, releasing the tension in the fascia and the muscles under the foot. And again, holding that stretch. And when you're done, we're going to straighten the bent knee and bend the other leg and do it again. Bending over till you feel a stretch, relaxing the knee and that straight leg. And then the second part, watching your balance and leaning back. And the third part, leaning forward. And if you're not feeling a stretch on that third part, leaning forward for a stretch in the bottom of the leg, in the calf, and under the foot, you can move that foot forward an inch or two and then bend the body back, and you should feel more of a stretch there in the calf and the bottom of the foot. Okay, now we're moving up the body just a bit to what we call the lumbopelvic hip complex. That's just a fancy name for our trunk area. Let's see if we can get the whole body in here. So I'm going to show you a stretch for the hip flexors. These are probably the muscles that get the tightest when we're sitting over 2 hours during the day. So I'm going to show you a simple stretch for that. This is called a TFL stretch or a hip flexor stretch. So we are going to pull a dining chair up next to us. We can also do this next to a counter. And then we're spreading the legs in a wide stance. Toes are facing forward. That back heel is planted. This leg is as straight as possible. And then we're just rocking the hips under and forward and bending that front knee. And you should start to feel a stretch right here in the front of the hip. Again, 30 to 60 seconds. After that, then you can alternate, move the other leg forward and repeat. Keeping that back heel planted, that back leg straight, rocking the hips under and forward and bending that front knee. Okay, now we're moving to the lower back. I'm going to show you a stretch that you can do on your bed. This is not one that you do in the middle of the day if you're working, obviously, unless you've got a place where you can lie down. We're just going to lay flat on our back and then drawing our knees to our chest. We're going to grab the knees with our hands, or if you're flexible enough, you can reach and clasp the fingers. And we're just hugging the knees to the chest, not forcefully, gentle at first, and just feeling a gentle stretch on the lumbar portion of the back. One tip on stretches, we want it to be slightly uncomfortable, but not painful. And so if you're experiencing pain, then you want to back off just a bit. So if you're feeling a stretch there, maybe 15 seconds in, you can pull them a little bit tighter and get a little bit more of a stretch. Again, 30 to 60 seconds. You can even go a little bit more if you've still got some range of motion there, pulling the knees tighter to the chest, experiencing a little more of a stretch. Then you can back off and do it again. One thing to remember is we don't want to push the muscles too much, or we can create some damage to the muscle fibers. So a gentle stretch is better than a very intense stretch. Okay, now moving up the body. Next in line is the upper back. So I'm going to show you a stretch that's good to do about every day. I call this a neutral spine stretch, and I'd show you my head, but I want you to see the middle part of the body here. And so first part is tucking the hips under and forward. Then what we're going to do is contract the pelvic floor, the muscles that shut off the urine stream and terminate a bowel movement. We're going to contract those muscles, and with the same muscles pulling up and in, and then pulling the belly button in toward the spine. And lastly, in the trunk area, we're going to squeeze the glutes to lock all that in place. And then holding those 4 contractions, we're going to tuck the chin in and stretch the neck tall. Remember, we're holding this for 30 to 60 seconds. So maybe after 10 to 15 seconds, we're going to stretch the neck up a little bit higher. Just in your mind, think we're stretching a 1/4 inch taller. And let that sit for 10 seconds or so. And then we're going to stretch the neck just a little bit taller, still holding this contraction down below, tucking the hips under and forward, contracting the pelvic floor, and pulling up and in with those muscles, belly button in toward the spine, squeezing the glutes, up top, chin tucked, neck tall, stretch higher and higher, and then relax. And you can do it again. Best to do that one 2, maybe 3 times a day if you have the time. And so I would say that's one of the more essential stretches that we can do for the body. Okay, now we're moving up the body. What's next? Above the back, we come to the shoulders, right? And then to the neck. So we're going to talk about shoulders first here. A couple of different movements you can do to just stretch the shoulders, make some room in that joint. The first one is what I call a supine, meaning face up, overhead weighted stretch. You can do this stretch with a barbell if you have one in the house, or you can pick up a jug of laundry detergent or something else of weight. By that, I mean 5 to 8 pounds. And so you can use that just as well. I'm going to go ahead and use the household item just for illustration purposes here. We're going to bend the knees to create a neutral lumbar spine. We're just reaching overhead. I suggest you do this on the bed where you're able to lay with your head at the edge of the bed, because what we want to do is take that object, extend it up overhead, extend the arms all the way, and then we're just going to let the weight of that object carry our arms downward. I can't do that here, obviously, but you're going to let the object carry your arms downward past the edge of the bed. And what that's going to do is stretch these lat muscles and the muscles surrounding the shoulder, not all of them, but some, with this stretch. And again, you're going to hold that 30 to 60 seconds and then take a rest. And if you notice some stiffness in that area, recommend just doing it one more time. Another 30 to 60 seconds, let that stretch. Also, I recommend cleansing breaths just to get oxygen flowing through the body, because those muscle fibers are going to recognize and hold that stretch a little bit longer with oxygen flowing to those muscle fibers. Okay, then next up, I'm going to make a couple of adjustments to the cameras here. This next one I call the overhead shoulder thrust. We're going to take the arms up overhead in an O shape, and then we're going to push the shoulders upward. That's going to create some room in the ribs and in the upper spine. And as we're doing this, we're going to take a couple of cleansing breaths, like I mentioned earlier. And cleansing breath is just breathing in through the nose, filling the belly and filling the lungs, and then out through the mouth immediately afterward. So it looks a little bit like this. Recommend at least a couple of those. One more thing to note here is down below at the trunk, we're tucking the hips under and forward, contracting the pelvic floor. Okay, as we're doing this, what that's going to do is elongate the spine from top to bottom, or bottom to top, if you want to look at it that way. So let's do one more here. We're raising the hands up, maybe interlocking the fingers. We are pushing the shoulders up high to elongate the rib cage and spine, and then commencing the cleansing breaths. Okay. Now moving on up the spine, at the very top is the neck, right? And the neck connects to the skull. So a couple of movements here. First one I call checking traffic. All we're doing here is just looking over the shoulder up to the point of discomfort, up to the point where we're pushing the neck up to its limit in the range of motion here. And just holding it there to let those muscles stretch. While we're doing this, we're keeping a neutral spine. So we're tucking the hips under and forward. If you think about it, we're contracting the pelvic floor. And then up top, we're stretching the neck tall. And then halfway through that stretch, you're going to strain back just a bit more. And again, 30 to 60 seconds. After that, we're going to come back to center and then to the other side. Looking back up to the point of discomfort, holding it there, paying attention to the neutral spine, hips under, neck tall. And then again, halfway through it, straining back a bit further, 30 to 60 seconds. And I highly recommend at least 2 cycles with this one. So going back to the other side. Okay, and you're going to notice as you strain back, you're able to look back a little bit further fairly easily the second time around. And then halfway through, straining back a bit further. Same thing back to center and other side. Again, holding each of those 30 to 60 seconds. So your nervous system recognizes the muscle fibers holding the stretch and makes that last a little bit longer for you. The last one is what I call ear up and over. So we're imagining a string or rope attached to the ear. I don't recommend actually doing that, but an imaginary string pulling the ear upward. And the reason we say that is because we don't want this pulling the other ear down toward the shoulder, constricting these other muscles, ligaments, and vertebra on the other side. So we're lifting this ear up toward the ceiling and then over slightly until you feel a good stretch in the side of the neck. Not intensely uncomfortable and not painful. If you feel either of those, back off just a bit. But you're paying special attention to raising that ear up just a bit more all through the stretch. And of course, we're tucking the hips under and forward, keeping that spine neutral. 30 to 60 seconds here, then back to neutral and to the other side, lifting that ear up and over. 30 to 60 seconds. And if you experience tightness, stiffness in that side, go ahead and do a couple cycles there. So took a lot of time explaining. I didn't want to rush through this. So hopefully you've taken your time and watched through this and tried these stretches yourself. Consistency is really the key here. You know, dividing these up so you're doing a couple of these every day. You know, all of these obviously don't have to be done every day to maintain pliability in the muscles and flexibility in the muscles and joints. But doing these exercises regularly, or these stretches, say morning and evening, and working one in the middle of the day is really going to help to increase flexibility and pliability in the muscles and joints. So I hope you get into the habit and the lifestyle of doing these stretches regularly on a daily basis and weekly basis. It's really essential. It's not just a good idea, but it's essential to correct the effects of prolonged sitting. So if you're a sitter, if your job requires it, or home life just involves sitting for more than an hour or two a day, then these stretches are a great idea. In other words, essential to maintaining flexibility and pliability in the body. So I wish you well with these. I'd love to hear back feedback and comments, but again, no judgment. If you're sitting, drink, move, and stretch what's tight. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you soon.